Am I a horrible person? We didn't hate each other, but we didn't really like each other. Judgy and controlling. Red flag number 1, I am not innocent, and something I say sets her off. Red flag number 2 starts to emerge. Not gonna pay attention to that. That's why it all ends up imploding at the end. And one of my many regrets, probably not the best idea. I needed a break. And this is where shit hits the fan. The friendship is effectively over. It never should have gone as far as it did. I broke up with one of my best friends, and we had a messy breakup. Let's get into it, shall we? Welcome back to How to Be You, a podcast where I tell you about how I'm just trying to figure out how to be me in this crazy game of life, in the hopes that it shows you how to be a little bit more authentically yourself as well. I'm Sarah Simpson. I'm a body image coach and a self-love expert, which means that I know that self-love and figuring out who we are is not an easy journey a lot of times. There's a lot of up and downs, there's a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of things that we look back on and we either laugh or cry. And today, we are diving into a very important question, which is like, am I a horrible friend? Maybe just like, am I a horrible person? But we're gonna go with friendship as the theme for today. And a time in my life where I very much asked myself, am I a terrible friend? If you were with us last episode, you know that I have the Mint Green Journal, which is about a month in my life in 2024 where my entire life hit the fan. Last episode, I told the story about how someone that I convinced myself I was going to be in a romantic relationship with for about 6 months, probably, ended up not being into me at all. It was a story I completely made up in my own head, and I broke my own heart, and how I moved through that and the lessons I learned. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's as juicy as it sounds. Go check it out, please. Today, we're diving into something else in my life that changed around this time, which is that I broke up with one of my best friends, and we had a messy breakup. Now, I'm not going to be diving into that person and all of the things that I feel they did wrong, because I believe that when it comes to relationships that don't work out, yes, sometimes the other person just sucks, but a lot of times it's that the dynamic we created between each other was toxic or wasn't healthy or sucked or whatever you want to call it. And that is what I feel is true in this situation. I think that there's things that I will never do again and things I will never tolerate again in friendships. And in this situation, there's a lot that I had to learn in a very uncomfortable way how to do better in order to be a better friend. There was mistakes made on all fronts. And unfortunately, it's one of the things that happens in life. I find that friendship breakups are one of these things that is the most painful when it comes to any sort of relationship ending. And I think it's because romantic love is put on such a pedestal as so much more important, but we've normalized that romantic relationships end. That's just what happens. But then we've put friendship on a lower pedestal, it's less important, but also put the pressure on it that it never ends. And any friendship ending isn't seen as a chapter closing and you go in your separate ways a lot of times. It's often seen as it must be their fault or my fault. It must be a statement about either they're not good enough or I'm not good enough, especially if it doesn't end all sunshine and rainbows like my friendship did not. And that's really a lot of what I went through in this friendship breakup. This is a friendship breakup that I knew needed to happen, especially looking back on it. And it was not something that was initiated by me, but I still knew it needed to happen. And even though I knew it needed to happen, it felt terrible. So let's get into it, shall we? Now, as I try to be very honest with you about me and who I used to be and who I am today, I need to give a little disclaimer of who I was at this time. This is approximately March to July of 2024. So at the time of me recording it, this is 2 years ago. I've grown a lot since then. I also have enough perspective that I can be more honest with myself about who I was at this time. At this time in my life, I had been living in Bali for 9 months, about a year, when things really start to go downhill at the start of this story. And I had come from a codependent relationship. I didn't recognize it was codependent at the time. I had a conversation maybe 6 months ago with a dating coach who was like, girl, that was so codependent. And it finally clicked in my brain that it was. But I had been in a codependent romantic relationship for 4 years through end of college and COVID until before I came to Bali. And then in my college years and my high school years, which was the life before this, I was in extremely codependent female relationships, like friendships. And that was something I was more aware of. So at this point in my life, spring and summer of 2024, I'm trying not to be someone who is codependent anymore. That's who I want to be. However, who I was someone who was still figuring that out, and someone who was still very new in a completely new country, completely started my life over. I moved to Bali, I didn't know anyone. I'm now a good chunk of time in, but if anyone's ever moved cities or countries or even just states, you know that it takes usually at least a year to feel like you're really getting your footing. And I was coming up on that mark. I was still very new. And the learning curve of moving from the United States to Southeast Asia, like time, it's just different in every way possible. So the culture shock took a long time to release. This is a pressure cooker for codependent relationships if you have codependent tendencies. You are alone. You are looking for people who feel safe and often familiar, so often people who are from the same country as you, and you often become friends or date people just because it means you don't have to be alone. That's not the only reason people make friends when they travel, but it's a big reason a lot of times. And in my case, and in her case, I do believe this was a friendship of convenience that never should have gone as far as it did. But it did. And that's what this story is about. So I come into this with codependent tendencies that I'm trying to break. I meet someone else who, red flag number one, has a lot in common with me in ways that I now try not to have in common with new friends. No hate to these things. These are things that I used to struggle with myself. But me and this person both have an anxiety disorder. Both have codependent tendencies. Both have eating disorder histories. Struggle to be alone. Both brand new in this place. And then both from a similar physical location and home environment that we had both chosen to leave for a reason. So coming back together, recreating that environment within our friendship, probably not the best idea. Red flag number one, I interpret as like, we have so much in common. I'm not saying it's a red flag to have anxiety or to be someone who has had an eating disorder. Again, I am these things. But at this time in my life, I was trying not to have those things anymore. And so going towards somebody who was struggling with them way more than I was, almost in this like mindset of like saving them, protecting them, and that being my value in the friendship, it just pulled me back into those things that I had worked so hard to distance myself from. I feel this way in romantic relationships as well. Like I have so much love and compassion for people who maybe have never been to therapy, who have still struggled a lot more with their mental health or their body image or their self-confidence than I am at this time in my life. I have so much compassion for the men I date who are in that position, but it's also a sign to me now that we shouldn't go forward in a romantic relationship because we are not in the same place in our lives. However, at this time, I saw that as something we had in common, so we should be best friends. We start spending all of our time together. And the thing about being codependent, well, two things about being codependent. Number one, codependency takes two to tango. So you can't say someone else is codependent with you and not admit that you're also codependent, like the co part. Number two, makes you judgy and controlling, because codependency in a lot of cases, codependent relationships and friendships, they operate on this fear that we cannot be apart, and that if one person isn't okay, that the other person isn't okay. And so we often become very judgy because we're afraid of being rejected by them and therefore left by them and therefore alone. And we often become controlling because we're trying to control them having negative feelings, negative emotions, because if they're not okay, we're not okay. That is the dynamic in this relationship. And what happens when you are codependent, but you are not well matched, because again, we are close friends because we had these surface level things in common. I don't think that we actually really liked each other as people, if I'm honest. Like, we didn't hate each other, but we didn't really like each other. What happens in that situation is that you make so many compromises. And so our friendship is deepening as in we're spending more and more time together. We are creating and solidifying the habit of spending time together, of being together all the time. We are creating an identity in our new life in this country that is still very fresh. I am someone who has this person as a best friend, who spends all my time with this person, who is known because I am friends with this person. Other people have seen us together so much that they know that we're best friends. That's part of my identity. But behind the scenes, we're both compromising so much. I'm doing things all the time that I don't want to do because it'll keep her happy or it'll make her happy. And likewise, whether I could admit that or not at the time, I was developing resentment towards her because I was compromising my wants and my boundaries. And she does the same thing. That's why it all ends up imploding at the end. Now, about a month into our friendship is where red flag number 2 starts to emerge. She has an injury, which means that she can't walk well, she's on crutches, and she can't leave the house. I spend so much time with her because she doesn't want to be alone, and we are codependent. I also am newer in this town, newer in this country, and I want to have a fun life, and I want to make friends. And I meet someone who's still one of my best friends today, but she's brand new in my life at the time. And I'm like, this girl seems cool. And I tell my best friend, I'm gonna go hang out with her. She seems really cool. Her response, because she's bedridden on crutches, is don't leave me. I'm afraid that if you go hang out with her, you'll forget about me. A moment of silence for that, because that is so frustrating to hear when I think about the position that put me in, but that's also just incredibly sad. And I have absolutely felt that myself. I won't be chosen by friends. I was bullied a lot when I was a kid. I know she was too, like a lot in common in this respect. That's really sad that she felt that she was gonna be forgotten if she wasn't fun anymore, if she couldn't come out and do stuff with us. And I remember saying, like, you can come or she can come here and we'll all hang out. Also, this is a red flag. The jealousy that started to present itself when I had other friends. This happened more than once with multiple different people when I wanted to go spend time with somebody else. However, one of the lessons we have to learn from this situation is that you need to take accountability for your own role in the situation. I did say, you can come with us or she can come here. I tried to find a compromise. But what I also did was I compromised my boundaries and my wants and my needs once again. I didn't really want to hang out, the three of us. I needed a break. I needed time with somebody else. It's nothing against the person. Sometimes you just don't want to hang out with them 24/7. It's normal to want time alone and to want time with other people. But I offered immediately to compromise that desire, that need. I also spent more time at home after that. I carried that guilt of I don't want her to feel a certain way. And I deepened that resentment because I compromised what I actually wanted and needed. And again, I know she did this too. I need to own my role in this dynamic. This is one of the big lessons I had to learn from this. Now, as I live this beautiful, wonderful life with a lot of privilege in Bali, one of the privileges is that we all travel a good amount. After this chunk of time, she goes on a trip, I go on a trip. We are apart for at least like 2 months. We end up being in Bali again at the same time, living on the same property a couple months later. And I realize in lieu of her coming back that we've barely spoken at all. And part of me is really hurt by that. It's like, so you leave the country and we're not friends anymore? That's also very characteristic of codependency. Codependent people need to be codependent. So if you can't be codependent with them, they go find somebody else to be codependent with. That's just how it works. And since I wasn't in the same place as her and she wasn't in the same place as me, we couldn't be codependent with each other. So we didn't speak. She was codependent with her partner that she was traveling with, and I honestly don't even remember. I either started to change these patterns once and for all and spend time alone, and I probably had some other people I spent a lot of time with, but honestly, I remember spending a lot of time alone at this point. So I'm like, okay, as soon as we're not in the same place, we don't hang out at all, And I think that's also a red flag, like just a sign that we didn't even really enjoy or benefit from each other's company that much. We were just close because it fulfilled this desire to not feel alone. Then she comes back, and this is where shit hits the fan. As all beautiful, good things do, it completely implodes. We have been back in the same place, back in Bali, for a short period of time. We haven't really hung out much. I think we're both feeling like we don't even like each other that much, but it was just the habit last time we were here to hang out. And we end up hanging out, and something I say sets her off. And I'm not going to go into what it was because I think regardless of how you look at it, what I said wasn't the best thing to say, and how she reacted wasn't the best way to react. So again, we don't need the juicy details on that one. We can know that we both did things that were not the best. Something I say sets her off. And the way that this whole friendship implodes is that we've barely spoken over the last few months. We've barely spent time together. She ends up reaming me, tearing me a new one for an hour in a public place, like in a restaurant. And I sit there for an hour, and one of my many regrets is I take it. I sit there and I hear this list, one thing after another of you did this, you did that, you're a bad friend because of this, you do this, you think that about me. And I remember being so caught off guard and being like, you don't know what I think about you. I'm appalled that you think that I think all these horrible things when you're not in the room. I speak very highly of you. I didn't know that these things that I did upset you. And also, me not being able to take accountability for anything she was saying because she was yelling in my face, telling me I'm a horrible person. It's hard to say, I'm so sorry in that moment because it doesn't feel the safest. But I do regret not being able to just say sorry for some things. I said sorry later. I just couldn't in that moment. But it implodes. One thing that she said to me that really made this all click of like, I will never have a friendship like this again, was she said, verbatim, like I remember this clear as day, 9 months ago, you did this thing, and I did you the favor of letting it go. And this is one of the points I want to drive home because, as I've mentioned already, I was carrying resentment in this friendship as well. I am not innocent of it. But resentment is the result of sacrificing your own boundaries and your own needs, and it does no one any favors. And this truth clicked in my brain in that statement because she said, 9 months ago, you did this thing. I did you the favor of letting it go. You have not let it go if you're bringing it up now. It doesn't feel like a favor to be getting reamed in public for being a horrible person. And it was 9 months ago, which means you've been carrying this hurt that I didn't know hurt you for that much time. And that doesn't help anyone. So she holds things in for 9 months that hurt her. I can't admit what I've done wrong. We are not feeling good in this friendship anymore. I realize I never want to do this again. I go home feeling miserable, I'm sure as she does as well. I sleep on it, I wake up the next day, and I have a little bit more clarity to say I'm sorry for the things that I had done that I can acknowledge were not nice. I didn't realize I was doing it, but they weren't nice, and I say sorry. Her response is, wow, you're apologizing. You don't do that. Very passive aggressive. People respond different ways when they're hurting. And again, I'm like, okay. Now I'm trying to be the better person, and then like, I still don't want to be in this friendship. That's it for me. And from that moment, I stopped trying to repair. She stops trying to repair. The friendship is effectively over. And the exit from that looks like what I hear from a lot of friendship breakups, which is, I know I don't want to be in this friendship anymore. I know that wasn't right for me anymore. I can see what I did wrong. I can see what they did wrong. And it still feels like shit. I still have all of these questions in my mind of, am I a terrible friend? Am I a terrible person? And the answer is yes and no. Are you a terrible person? No. Are we sometimes bad friends? I don't know about you, but yes, I have absolutely been a bad friend. Oftentimes not on purpose. However, I think one of the reasons that friendship breakups are so hard is because we have so much pressure on ourselves for friendships to last forever. And do you know what you have to do for something to last forever? You pretty much need to be either really consistent or really good at it. And with friendship, I think we put pressure on ourselves to be both. And so if a friendship ends, that opens this idea of, oh my God, I messed it up. It must be my fault. What if it's my fault? What if I ruin every friendship in my life? Was I a bad friend? And is that going to cause me to never have the lifelong friendships, the girlfriend groups when I'm 80 years old, the memories that I want to look back on? Is me being an imperfect friend and what we've now labeled as a bad friend or a terrible friend in our minds, is that going to block me from having those things? It's been 2 years since this. I can tell you, being a bad friend does not stop you from ever having good friendships. I'm recording this now, and if you're not watching, if you're just listening, you can't see, but I am in this baggy white sweatshirt. I don't know what brand it is, probably from Turkey. That's where my best friend is from. Not the person I'm talking about in this story, but a different best friend that I met around this time in my life. She has been my best friend for more than 2 years now. If you're watching, you can see that like just thinking about her brings mist to my eyes. And when this friendship ended, she was new in my life. And I built a new friendship, many friendships since then, but I built this friendship with my best friend Ellie. And it's unlike any friendship I have ever had in my life. This friendship with the person who gave me this sweatshirt, who gave me this necklace, it's gonna mess up the microphone, but who gave me this necklace, both of the necklaces I'm wearing, we have matching ones for both. She is the type of friendship that I have always wanted and didn't know if I deserved or I could have. Is our friendship perfect? Absolutely not. Has there been so many times where we've hurt each other's feelings? Yeah. Has there been times where I've been like, damn it, I've been a bad friend? Or that thought of like, am I being a bad friend? I've absolutely had so many of those moments. It's not about being a perfect friend. The reason that Ellie's my favorite person in the world, the reason that we have a friendship that so many people envy, that so many people go, aw, when they see us together, that so many people look up to, is because she's safe to make mistakes with. And we are friends for the right reasons, which is that we love each other and we support each other and we genuinely want to be around each other. I could go on and on about her, but the reason I bring her up at all in this conversation is because I didn't know a friendship like that when I was stuck in the pattern of codependent, misaligned friendships that repeated this belief of this is the best friendship gets. She's someone in my life. She gave me this sweatshirt. Did I mention that? I brought up the sweatshirt. I don't feel like I said it. She gave me this sweatshirt. I think of her every time I put it on, and I love her to death. She taught me that I can have the kind of friendship I want. So if you see yourself in any of this story, let me remind you of a few things. Number one, resentment does no one any favors. It is often a sign that you or the other person is neglecting or ignoring your needs, your wants, or your desires. There's no shame in that. We often have to learn how to speak up for ourselves and set boundaries, but that is often where resentment comes from. Number two, don't ignore the red flags. They're red for a reason. We don't have to assume they tell us everything about someone, but don't ignore them like I did. Like I literally was like, not gonna pay attention to that. Don't ignore them like I did. And number three, own your shit, hold accountability for yourself, and own your part of the dynamic. They are not toxic, we were toxic. At least in my situation, that is the truth. So often, we create toxic dynamics. And we can actually create healthier relationships by creating healthier dynamics. It's not about picking the perfect person or being the perfect person. If I was friends with this person that this story is all about, this toxic friendship, breakup, blow up, whatever you want to call it, if I was friends with them again today, I think that it would go really different because of the things I've learned. I don't regret that that friendship ended. I don't want that friendship back in my life, but I can also acknowledge that because of the mistakes, because of the things that hurt me, I have a healthier perspective on friendship, and I've learned how to be who I want to be in friendships because of it. It took me a long time to stop feeling like shit about that friendship. Even though I knew how I had been hurt and disrespected, I couldn't get over how I had hurt and disrespected someone else until I saw my patterns changing in real times in my friendship with Ellie. And my friendship with that girl that I mentioned was really cool that I met. She's also my other best friend, and I feel so safe with her. And in all of the friendships I've built since, even some friendships that have ended, I've done better than I did in the past. If you've been through a friendship breakup, please tell me about it. I am so curious if anyone resonates with this story. I feel a little bit crazy sometimes when I tell it because I'm trying to be really honest about how I mess things up too, but there was a lot that hurt me, and it is going to be subjective to my experience, but I'm sure that there's at least one person out there who can relate. So please, if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, leave a comment, or if you're on Instagram, please tell me your story there. I really need to hear it when it comes to this conversation. And thank you so much for listening to me talk about something that honestly carried a lot of regret and shame and embarrassment for a long time, and sometimes still makes me angry to think about. But it's just one of the many chapters of me learning how to be me. That's why it's here on How to Be You. So thanks so much for listening. If you can support the podcast in any way, even if it's just following, giving us a little 5-star rating, I love to see it. If you're on Instagram, comment an emoji. Like, just give me something, babe, please. Support the podcast, especially because we are so new. Comments, saves, shares, reviews are so helpful. And let me know what you want to see more of, what resonated, and I will talk to you soon. Love you, bye.